This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Somalia's president suspends the prime minister, citing allegations of corruption. Libyan lawmakers meet over delayed presidential election. And tributes continue to pour in for South African anti-apartheid hero Desmond Tutu. This is Africa Live. Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Peninah Karibe, and with me in studio with the business headlines is Rala.
Thank you very much, Peninah. Here's what's coming up in the next 30 minutes. The Omicron variant of COVID continues to disrupt travel around the world. We'll have some of the latest data. And Tunisia intends to raise fuel and power prices while freezing public pay next year as part of efforts to fund its budget for 2022. We'll have the details on those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Peninah.
Thank you, Rama. Somalia's Prime Minister has ordered security forces in the country to take orders directly from him. Mohamed Hussein Roble made the announcement through a statement broadcast live on national television. The move could potentially deepen an ongoing dispute with President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo. The Prime Minister was suspended by the President on Monday after the two leaders fell out over the weekend over parliamentary elections. The parliamentary vote began on November 1st and was to be concluded by the 24th of this month. However, lawmakers say that only 24 out of 275 representatives have been elected. Under Somalia's electoral process, regional councils choose a Senate. Clan elders then pick members of the lower house who install a new president. We spoke to security analyst David Otto Endley on what the latest developments could mean for Somalia.
I think, first of all, this is not the first time that the Prime Minister has been suspended by the President. We've seen that in the most recent past. Also, we had a situation where a Prime Minister was removed by vote of no confidence by the Parliament. So in terms of the legality, I don't think there is an issue there. The President has the powers to suspend the Prime Minister in an event that there is a serious breach. In this particular case, the President is accusing the Prime Minister of corruption. Of course, this accusation is made by both sides. The Prime Minister, on the other hand, says the President is deliberately delaying the elections as per the 17th September agreement. So the legal bases are there, but I think the risk here is that we would see perhaps a further delays of the lower house, of assembly elections, because of course the upper house assembly election is now completed. So, we're expecting some further delays as a result of this. I think the impact could be quite dire because, of course, Al-Shabaab has been a very powerful impediment to the stability of Somalia. And the elections are expected to stabilize and unite the country against the Al-Shabaab insurgency that has been ongoing for decades. This further division between the Prime Minister and the President will create another loophole for Al-Shabaab to continuously exploit and explore various avenues, to continue with its violent activities. So I don't see this as, some kind of a development from, the President's perspective. For him, he wants to stabilize and get the election process done by a competent Prime Minister. But I think from a security angle, this might give Al-Shabaab another opportunity, to further, carry out its violent activities in the absence of a legitimate, position for the President to continuously be in power. So, this is much more a disaster, for Somalia. And I think one way or the other, there should be a solution to this as quickly as possible.
The United Nations has confirmed the closure of its passenger operations facility at the Aden Ada International Airport in the Somali capital Mogadishu following a directive from the government last week. Mohammed Kahie has the details from Mogadishu.
In a statement, the UN office in Somalia said it takes seriously the concerns raised by the federal government of Somalia about UN operations, and it regrets the instructions to close down the terminal, saying the decision was taken abruptly with minimal prior consultations. The UN office in Somalia further said it regrets the closure that was apparently prompted by allegations that are yet to be presented to the global body for further investigations. UN added that it remains committed to its partnership with the Somali government and its people. The Somali Immigration Department, through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on Wednesday last week, directed the closure of the terminal, citing violation of immigration protocols. In a letter to UN, the Somali government also directed the UN and AMISOM staff to use the VIP lounge and the main terminal at Aden Ade International Airport. Mohammed Kahie, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Libya's parliament met on Monday to discuss a new change in the elections schedule, as well as the mandate of the current interim government, which was meant to end last Friday when presidential polls should have taken place. But the polls were postponed over disputes about its legal basis and the candidacies of contenders. The country's electoral committee has suggested pushing the vote to January 24th. Western region politicians are trying to push for a longer delay. They want to hold a constitutional referendum first. The UK has been accused of defending corruption and interfering in internal processes by Libyan parliamentarians. Libya's first presidential elections were intended to mark a fresh start for the country after a decade of unrest after an uprising that ousted and killed Muammar Gaddafi. CGTN's Adel Mahri joins us live from Cairo for an update on this. Adel, do we know what the legislators are proposing as a way forward for the presidential polls?
The Libyan parliament is still convened, Peninah, and the session has been moved on from a live broadcast where all the details and the instructions and the suggestions from the electoral committee of the members of parliament were presented. But after that, it went into a closed session through which, according to the Speaker of the Parliament, they will be discussing security issues and security files presented by the Ministry of Interior and the Libyan Intelligence Bureau. And this is not, the content of which is of top secrecy and therefore is not for broadcast. But what we know so far is that the Elections Committee inside the parliament recommended to hold, as you said, a constitutional referendum first, which is something that will be widely accepted by Western politicians, specifically the representatives of the High Council of State, who have been pushing for that initiative for months. And this in itself is the first step that the parliament, maybe for the first time, moving alongside the High Council of State together in the similar vision. And yet it's not definitive, it's just a recommendation. So we're still waiting at the end of the session, if it has not been stretched till tomorrow. But at the end of these discussions, the members of parliament will have to vote on these recommendations. So all of these for now are only recommendations. They also discussed the possibility to reshuffle or reappoint a new cabinet, specifically after accusations of corruption have been rising lately against Prime Minister Abdul Hamid Dbeiba and his cabinet, who have been lavishly making spendings to support Libyans to get married, for instance, and shifting that into more or less a political gain for his presidential campaign. So a lot is still being under discussion, and it seems going to be a very long light for Libyan politicians in Tobruk, where the parliament is based.
All right, Adel, thank you for that. Adel Mahri live in Cairo. Sudanese Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok is expected to announce his resignation soon. Political figures have urged him to stay, but he insists he has to leave. It remains unclear what has fueled his decision. But in the past weeks, Hamdok has faced a backlash on the streets and among political groups after he made a deal with the military and was reinstated as Prime Minister last month. Protesters who previously saw Hamdok as a symbol of civilian resistance to military rule have denounced his deal as a betrayal.
استقالة حمدوك هي بمثابة
Hamdok's expected resignation is an early warning of the state of political fluidity that exists in the Sudanese political scene, from where of the intransigence of the military or the party that carried out the coup of the 25th of October on the one hand, and on the other hand, the forces rejecting Hamdok-Burhan agreement. The Prime Minister found himself alone, without a political incubator and without public support.
جلسنا في اجتماع مطول لإجازة.
In my opinion, there is another reading and a small possibility that this expected resignation can be understood as a political maneuver and a political tactic by Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok. Hamdok is well aware that he is the remaining link between the political forces, the coup camp and the international community, and therefore this expected resignation may grant those behind the coup the chance to fully expand in the state's joints and impede the expected civil democratic transformation.
South Africa and the world are mourning the passing of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. The Nobel Peace Prize laureate and veteran of the South African struggle against white minority rule died at the age of 90. CGTN's Olisa Njamela has more.
We commit ourselves to peace.
A much-loved human rights and social justice champion, Archbishop Desmond Mpilo Tutu lived and preached the values of justice, equality and forgiveness. A fierce critic of the apartheid government, Tutu was a clergyman who preached against the apartheid government from the pulpit. Even after the fall of the apartheid regime, the Arch, as he was affectionately known, never shied away from confronting South Africa's shortcomings or injustices. As family, friends, and the world remember the life of the Arch, many say he has left a lasting legacy.
He has been a fantastic man. He contributed a lot in the South African struggle.
It is a great loss, but also a great gain, because now it's put us on the map once again. He was alive and he did what he could when he was alive. And living 90 years is just an amazing blessing, meaning that he lived beyond of what God could ever give to anyone. So we really appreciate his life and continue to celebrate what he stood for.
He was an international icon. A humanitarian, he epitomized peace, harmony, justice.
I just want to say thank you to him for being one of those people that stood for today's youth. So yeah, that's why I love him so much. That's why I'm hurt.
President Cyril Ramaphosa also paid tribute to Archbishop Tutu, addressing the nation on Sunday evening. The president said the passing of Tutu is another chapter of bereavement in our nation's farewell to a generation of outstanding South Africans who have bequeathed us a liberated South Africa.
Archbishop Desmond Tutu was one of our nation's finest patriots. He was a man of unwavering courage, of principled conviction, and whose life was spent in the service of others. He in many ways embodied the essence of our humanity.
Tutu passed away at the age of 90 at his home in Cape Town on Sunday morning.
Black and white together.
The president also announced that there will be a mourning period during which all South African flags will be flown at half-mast. Tutu will be buried in Cape Town on Saturday, the 1st of January. Olisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a short break. Straight ahead. On International Day of Epidemic Preparedness, we'll look at Egypt's efforts to tackle future epidemics. And businesses in Kenya begin restricting access for no proof of vaccination.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot.
Tents here, bottles are being thrown. As they do so,
there are about 3 critical bridges here in Malawi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Tear gas, so it's all begun now.
Divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
This is the front line now after 9 days of fighting.
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from
within
the front
clear
line.
view of this front line position.
Africa is ending yet another pivotal year. From moments of uncertainty to moments of triumph, moments of unrest, moments of rapid change in business, climate change, security and diplomacy, and coming back from the brink. All these and much more on Events 2021.
Australia has recorded its first Omicron-related death as daily infections there surge. Where officials say they are not imposing fresh curbs, citing low hospitalization rates. In the US, tens of thousands of travelers have been stranded or forced to change holiday plans. Growing Omicron concerns forced airlines to cancel over 1,000 flights. Elsewhere in the world, Iran moved to bar travelers from parts of Western Europe. Other countries reporting new cases of the Omicron variant include South Korea, Jordan, Cambodia, India and Peru. Meanwhile, the United Nations marked the International Day of Epidemic Preparedness. It was created last year to stress the importance of preventing epidemics. The UN is launching a campaign to raise awareness about the need to be prepared for future health crises as exemplified by the COVID-19 pandemic. Yasser Hakim now takes a look at how Egypt is trying to put a plan in place to be better able to face any future epidemics.
Since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic in Egypt in March 2020, billions of dollars have been spent on providing proper health services for citizens to cope with this unexpected crisis. The way the virus spread globally, affecting both high vaccinated and low vaccinated countries alike, has been a revelation.
There are a lot of lessons learned from the COVID crisis, and the most important one is no country can be safe alone, and the safety of the entire universe is related to the safety of each single country. And it is very important to be very global, and all the facilities, all the equipment, all the medications, all the vaccination should be evenly distributed all over the world.
The North African country had initially lagged behind in facing the pandemic. COVID cases and deaths were high in the first year, because like most developing countries, it depended on the more scientifically advanced nations for vaccine supplies and medical assistance. Going forward, the government spent billions of dollars on building solid infrastructure for the health sector.
From the legal point of view, we are introducing the new health insurance reforming, and we are in a very strong and concrete process of upgrading, updating, new building for hospitals. Now the system includes more than 124,000 beds, and we are increasing. We are utilizing all the services what we have, health facilities which is organized and directed by the Ministry of Health and Populations, health facilities which are organized and owned by the university and attached to the Supreme Council of University Hospitals, other entities, and the private sector is also had a role in the health care providing for the Egyptian population.
The government has also taken further measures to reduce dependence on others.
The manufacturing of the vaccines, the know-how, the technology, we are trying to build our own vaccine with our own experience, and there is already steps which has taken a great step forward in doing that.
Officials hope by acquiring the technology and the newly developed infrastructure, the country will be better prepared to deal with possible future pandemics. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
The DRC is facing not only a fourth wave of coronavirus infections, but also tackling a low vaccination rate. The country is the least vaccinated in the world, and a rise in infections is putting a strain on the health system. Astatal has more.
The DRC is the least vaccinated country against COVID-19 in the world. Less than 300,000 people out of 90 million have received at least one vaccine dose. This comes as the country faces a fourth wave of COVID-19 cases, driven by the Omicron and Delta variants. All of this is putting a strain on the country's health system.
In a short period of time, the fourth wave is spreading really quickly, and infection rates are very high. It's true, we're at a hospital and we can see it. We're at a COVID-19 treatment center, and we can see that there's lots more sick people visiting who test positive upon examination.
In an effort to combat this, a vaccinodrome has been set up in Kinshasa.
With the fourth wave that has entered the DRC, we feel, especially in companies and associations, that there are groups of people who have come to say that they can already see such
vaccination for admission, for example, into national parks, game reserves, hotels, bars, restaurants.
But not everyone's demanding proof of vaccination just yet. At the cell phone retail store, where dozens of people are queuing,
excuse me, do you require a vaccine certificate?
In a phone call to national airline Kenya Airways and the flagship Standard Gauge Railway service confirmed that one could still travel without proof of vaccination.
So, as we've discovered, not many businesses are demanding for a vaccine certificate to access their premises. But it's a holiday today, and come Tuesday, the government may start enforcing the directive on vaccines. And that's left many people frustrated.
Several Kenyans took to social media to share their experiences after being denied access to certain places. But the directive also has public support.
It's a way of keeping the country safe.
As business people, this is important for us.
And the directives had an impact on the daily rate of vaccinations. On the 23rd of December, the Health Ministry tweeted that medics had vaccinated the highest daily number yet, over 200,000 people. As of the 26th December, 3.9 million Kenyans had been fully vaccinated. That's 14.4% of the country's adult population. But the vaccine directive remains controversial. A court suspended its implementation 2 weeks ago, pending the determination of a suit filed by a businessman. Some legal experts say the government is within its powers.
Being a pandemic, under the Public Health Act, government can gazette anything that is meant to protect its citizens.
For now,
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
AfricaLive. Find your voice.
In Nigeria, cane craft artists and entrepreneurs are cashing in on the Christmas festivities. The high demand for woven cane baskets comes with the season's gift-giving traditions. The once dying craft has now come alive as artists express creativity with the cane baskets in varying shapes and sizes. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam reports.
40-year-old Peter Robinson is popularly known as the King of Cane for his artistic dexterity in the craft. Weaving with gusto, he's doubling his efforts to finish clients' orders for these bespoke cane baskets. Robinson started cane craft over 3 decades ago. He was barely 7 years old. Now it's peak period this Yuletide, and his craft is finally paying off. He rakes in nearly 20% in profits. He credits it to his artistic prowess.
When you do a good job, the job sells itself. There is good profit in this job, especially if your work is good, and people in Abuja likes and will patronage a neat job anytime.
Robinson has a growing customer base. Adiola Nganje is one of those who patronize him. She runs Happy Hampers, a gift packaging business that's bolstering this Yuletide. Depending on the size and items, a hamper could cost between $45 and $250, and for exotic gifts, it costs even more.
The cane baskets are more durable, they are flexible, they are resistant to the weather.